I believe that my shrimp tank looks quite nice overall, but I would like to rid the tank of green hair algae and blackbeard algae. I've done a few things to combat that, but I want to give it a chance to work before I move on to something drastic. There is another method that I may try. I'll leave a link in the description. But before I do that, I'd like to conduct a few experiments and see if it's going to be safe for the various species of plant that I have. I've been saving plant clippings in this gallon jar among my Daphnia and blackworm cultures. Unsure what I'm going to do with them because they're heavily infested with hair algae, but this gives me an opportunity to experiment with a method that may rid a tank of the algae using hydrogen peroxide. First, I want to empty all of the plants infested with algae into a container and remove most of the green hair algae before putting them back into the jar, because I think that there's so much algae the peroxide will be quickly used up and absorbed by the algae. So if I remove most of it, hopefully the hydrogen peroxide will destroy the algae. I manually removed all the algae that I could from these plants. Getting it out of the Java moss was problematic, so most of it is still amongst that. And added 1.5 milliliters. You're supposed to put 1.5 milliliters of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon. This is a gallon jar, so only used 1.5 milliliters. And swirled it around in there a little bit. So now I'll wait and see if this is a viable method to rid the plants of green hair algae, and I'll see whether or not it harms the plants. After 24 hours, much of the green hair algae has fallen off the plants and collected on the bottom, and some of the algae still attached to the plants appears to be turning gray or white. It's difficult to tell at this point, but this appears to be working. After 3 days, the leaves on some of the plants seem to be curling up. I want to get them into a container where they'll get some nourishment, so I'm going to break this down and make room for the next stage or the next experiment in my little project here. Let's break this down and see what we have here. Looks like some of the plants are still quite infested with the algae. It may have helped some. So I want to get these plants into a container with some potting soil in the bottom and douse again with the hydrogen peroxide and hopefully destroy the rest of the algae. 12 hours after the second treatment of hydrogen peroxide, water wisteria and Java moss appear fine, but all of the green hair algae has turned a reddish color, so I believe it's dead. There's just nothing in the jar to knock it off the plants. So before I use hydrogen peroxide on the shrimp tank, I want to see if it will kill dwarf Sagittaria or broadleaf Sagittaria, If so, I want to remove those plants before treating the shrimp tank. But from what I've seen, if used at the proper dosage, hydrogen peroxide should be perfectly safe for shrimp.